Hello everyone, so today we are looking at Learning Unit 5 Theme 2, and what we need to do with this particular theme is just look at the way news articles are normally structured. Okay, and we're going to be dealing with 3 specific news structures. Alrighty, so firstly you need to know that different news stories require different structures, and depending on the type of article that you're wanting to write, if that's a hard article, hard news article, a soft news article, and also the various, the actual facts that that article is going to cover, that might require a different structure for the article. Okay, so there are 3 that you're going to deal with in first year, and the first one is the inverted pyramid structure, which we've already spoken about a little bit in class. The second one is the hourglass structure, and the third is the champagne glass structure. Alright, so we're going to go through these 3 today, and then I'm going to get you to think about them and do an activity on them. Alrighty, so the first thing that we're going to look at is the inverted pyramid structure. So I say there that this structure is one of the original structures. It was used in printed newspapers because it allowed articles to be trimmed from the bottom up. So if you have a look on the right hand side there, the inverted triangle that I've got there, you'll see that at the top I say that you always begin with the lead, and that's always the most important information that the article is going to tell the audience. If the most important information is at the top, it means that you can easily edit the article from the bottom up. And if you, for example, don't have enough space in a newspaper for the length of article that the journalist has written, you would just cut from the bottom up and everything would still be fine because the most important stuff is at the top. Okay, so this is a very practical structure. Now, because of online news, we don't really have the space issues that much anymore, but it's still a good structure to follow because readers still want all the most important information at the beginning of the article, preferably in the first paragraph. Okay, so when we talk about the inverted pyramid structure, we know that there is a lead. The very first paragraph of the article will be the lead, and in the lead you will have the 5 W's and an H, what we discussed in a previous class, and the lead should never really be longer than 30 words. Okay, so 25 to 30 words is sort of what you should be aiming for. If it's longer than 30 words, it's probably too much information just for the lead. Every sentence that you write in an article like this, for all hard news articles actually, must just cover one idea. Okay, so never try to pack too much information into one sentence. Every sentence must just carry one idea. So if you take a look at this inverted pyramid on the right, I pointed out that the first paragraph is always the lead. Then you might ask what will follow that first paragraph. So paragraph 2, I say there, expand on the details of the lead. Was there anything important to add, or that was omitted? So the lead is like the bare bones information that any reader should know, and then the second paragraph would expand on what the lead has spoken about. So remember, in previous lectures we've said that sometimes certain elements of the lead aren't included. For example, the how of the article or the why of the article might not always appear in the lead. And if that's the case, then normally those things are answered in the second paragraph because it requires a little bit more discussion. Okay, so paragraph 2, you're just expanding on any details that weren't properly covered in the lead. Then the following paragraph, you can follow up with less important information. So remember, with the inverted pyramid structure, we're starting with the most important information and working our way down to the least important information. Okay, so paragraph 3, some relatively important details but stuff that the reader doesn't have to know. Then the next paragraph could be a quote. I'm just saying that it could be a quote, it doesn't have to be a quote. Even paragraph 3 could be a quote, it doesn't have to be a quote. Okay, this is just a suggested format for the inverted pyramid. The most important thing with inverted pyramid is just that you have the lead, and that the second paragraph then discusses details that might have been left out. From there, you can do your own thing, but just make sure that the information goes from most important to least important, and in between the paragraphs you've got some quotes from relevant people. Okay, so paragraph 4 you can include a quote, paragraph 5, a little bit less important information. Paragraph 6, you can do another quote. Paragraph 7, the least important stuff. With an inverted pyramid structure, also remember that you don't have to have like a formal conclusion the way you would have for an essay, for example, or even for soft news. Soft news would require a conclusion often. But with the inverted pyramid, you don't need a conclusion. You would just simply end the article with the least important information. You can also end it on a quote, which can be quite useful as well. Okay, so that's the inverted pyramid. I have an example here just to quickly run you through it. So inverted is the example that you're going to find most often. It's really easy to find examples of this. So here's one. So police station in Cape Town closed after COVID-19 related case. Here in this very first paragraph, that's the lead. Okay, the most important stuff. And then in the second paragraph, what they've done here is they've used this quote to basically tell you more about what the lead was saying. So you could write in your own words more information if you wanted to, but obviously these guys felt that the quote really covered the information that was missing. Okay, so lead over here, second paragraph, more detail on what was discussed in the lead. Then from there on, all the little paragraphs just really go down in importance. Okay, they decrease in importance. You'll see some quotes here that they've decided to add. And then finally, this last little paragraph is the least important stuff that they could have said. They're just talking about another place that is also being decontaminated. Okay, so guys can read through this article. It's one of the links that I've posted on the next slide. So if you open it up, you can see what I mean. All of those examples will start with a lead. They'll have a paragraph that sort of explains stuff in more detail, and then they'll decrease in importance all the way to the end. Alrighty, so if we go to the next slide, here, these are the links that I was speaking about for the inverted pyramid structure. If you want some examples, this bottom one is the one that I've spoken about now. Alright, so the second structure that we need to know about is the hourglass structure, the hourglass. Right, so this structure begins like an inverted pyramid structure. So it starts basically just with the lead, and then the second paragraph and even the third paragraph then just detail what the lead has covered. Alright. But the difference that comes in here with the hourglass structure is that at some point in the article there's a transition of sorts. And that transition then takes the reader on to a further explanation. Okay, so I've written here, this further explanation will go into more detail about something that is important in the story and is not necessarily covered well enough in the lead or the initial treatment. So it's going to go into detail with another part of the story that wasn't necessarily covered in the lead or the first half of the story. Okay, so something else that is really important. Sometimes this could just be the context to the first story at the top, or like a background story. Alright, so it's more information that the journalist feels the reader needs to know in order to understand the context for the beginning story, or it could just be further information like a smaller story that is connected to the first story that's discussed. Okay, so I know this is quite confusing, but I'll take you through an example in a bit. So if you look at the picture on the right hand side there, you'll see it just illustrates the fact that this will start with a lead, the same way the inverted pyramid does. It gives you the story down to the least important information. Then in the middle there's some type of transition, and then it will start discussing a second story, whether that is more context or just a related story. Okay, so as an example, I've got this story. It's also one of the links on the next page. Alright, so coronavirus, 27 patients on ventilators as South Africa edges towards the end of hard lockdown. Okay, so this story starts like an inverted pyramid. Alright, here is the lead. It goes into a little bit more detail. So here's the initial story, all of this. Okay, it's all, this first part all just really deals with the idea of ventilators during the crisis in South Africa. So ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. Then all of a sudden, I'm just trying to get to it. All of a sudden over here, you'll see there's a little headline, or subheading rather. They start talking about the screenings, and they're specifically talking about the Limpopo screenings that have been taking place and how the numbers are a little bit odd. Okay, so this story is related to the one at the top, and it kind of follows on, but it is just a slightly different story that the journalist would have felt is important for the reader to also know in the context of the above part of the story. Okay, so it starts again like an inverted pyramid with a lead, goes, until at one point it transitions. So here's the transition, and then it starts dealing with a slightly different issue. Okay, and then it ends over there. So I suggest you go and read this article so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, and you can see how this article transitions from one story to the next. Okay, so that is the hourglass structure. And obviously the structure then, because it has this opportunity for a second type of story or a context, it's a good structure to use if you want to give the reader a lot of detail about a specific part of the story. Okay, the inverted pyramid is good for just reporting something that's just happened. It gets to the point really quickly, but the hourglass will do the same. It will tell you about something that's just happened, and then it gives the journalist the opportunity to also give a nice context to that story in the second half. Okay, so that's the hourglass structure. The third structure that you need to know about, so there's some examples of the hourglass if you want to follow them up. The third structure is the champagne glass structure. All right. So in the champagne glass structure, again, it starts like the inverted pyramid structure. So it starts with a lead and it goes down to the less important information. But with this one, there is a transition to a chronological retelling of events. So when we say something is chronological, that means that it is ordered it's put in the order in which it occurred. Okay, so there's some type of timeline that's happening. Right. This style is difficult to edit because you can't simply cut from the bottom, because if we're including a timeline that runs all the way to what is most recent, you can't cut from the bottom because the stuff at the bottom is quite important. It's detailing stuff that's just happened. All right. So if you look at the image on the right, it's a little bit cut off again, but all you need to know is it starts with the lead, it goes, it gives extra detail just as an inverted pyramid story would in the middle of the sort of cup of the glass over here, and then there's some type of transition, and then in chronological order, they are listing events from what happened first to what happened most recently. Okay, so here's an example of the champagne glass structure. So here the article is from CNN. Gunmen evaded police for nearly 12 hours and killed at least 18 in one of Canada's deadliest mass shootings. Right. So this article deals with the mass shooting that happened in Canada recently. So you'll see if you read it that it starts like a regular inverted pyramid, but then here under the image somewhere, this paragraph here, it says, investigators believe the incident began with a domestic violence incident at a home. Okay, so that everything from here upwards has probably just been a regular inverted pyramid article. Okay, then all of a sudden there's this paragraph that says this is how investigators believe this whole thing started, and from this paragraph, if you read down, it tells you the story in chronological order. This happened first, then that happened, then that happened, then that happened, all the way until the end of the events that occurred. Okay, so it's listing the details in chronological order. You can write, if you write this type of article, you can write it out the way they've done in paragraphs like this. Some articles you will also see use bullet points. Okay, so it'll give the article like an inverted pyramid, and then at some point there will be a slight transition, and then there might just be a timeline that lists events that happened. Okay, so that's the champagne glass And that's some examples. And that's all you need to know for this particular theme. So what I need you to do now is go and do activity 1 under this theme. Alright. These slides are also going to be relevant for the next time I see you. There's another activity that's going to be based on these videos and these slides. Okay, so please do keep them safe. And that's it from me. Thanks.